Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. All right, guys. Today's date, September the 3rd, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. On the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before we do get started, guys, let you know that we do try to watch our language, even though words do fly, and there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, Labor Day weekend. I figured because it's the weekend, we all needed some good news, even though I do have a good news segment at the end of this podcast. But I think just for this one moment in time, I think we can all agree what's about to be shown for the next 20 seconds is good news.
Former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin has been defeated in a special election for Alaska's only House seat. Democrat Mary Peltola won the ranked choice vote to become the first Alaska native and the first woman to hold the seat. She will finish the 4 remaining months in the term of GOP Representative Don Young, who passed away earlier this year. She'll run against Palin and another Republican again in November for a full term.
I don't know about y'all, but this is wonderful news. In the words of Donald Trump, this is huge, huge. This is huge, okay? This is huge. Sarah Palin is not elected. That's huge. I can't stress enough. I know that might be petty as all get out, but I don't feel bad in saying that. Aside from the fact that she was probably the only reason the GOP became relevant during the John McCain run when he was going against, Senator Barack Obama. Senator Barack Obama during his first run. That is the only reason the GOP ever became invested in somebody, because let's be honest, she was there for other reasons. Let's just leave it at that because I don't want to go too deep into it. But let's be honest. Look at her. Remember the GOP run when she was a part of it? Remember all the other things that came with that? No pun intended. But you see the point. Anyway, Palin's not running. Palin's not elected in the special election. She will try to campaign again come November. But hey, the fact she was defeated, sometimes you just need to have some good news, and I just thought that was it. But anyway, switching gears for a second, guys. Again, I hate to keep bringing up the elephant in the room. The failure in chief is doing what he does best when things aren't going his way. He lawyers people to death and takes them to court. Him and the Department of Justice is no different.
The showdown over government secrets. Lawyers for President Trump and Justice Department prosecutors facing off in a federal courtroom over Mr. Trump's request for an independent third party, what's known as a special master, to review documents seized in that controversial search at Mr. Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. Tonight, the judge saying she'll rule on that request at a later date. Mr. Trump's lawyers arguing the judge needed to help restore public confidence by allowing more transparency into the government's actions and dismissing the investigation into the former president's keeping highly classified documents, comparing them to an overdue library book. The Justice Department opposes an independent review of the documents, saying they've already gone through them and acknowledging more than 500 pages may be protected by attorney-client privilege. The DOJ argues the classified documents belong to the U.S., not to Mr. Trump. Quote, because he is no longer the president, he had no right to take those documents. The judge today also saying she'll make public a more detailed list of what the FBI seized at Mr. Trump's estate. Tonight, Mr. Trump is zeroing in on this evidence photo of top secret documents in the DOJ filing that he says FBI agents staged in his office to sway public opinion.
They took documents and they put them all over the floor. And then they deceptively put out that picture.
For weeks, Mr. Trump and his allies have argued that he declassified the documents, but his lawyers have not made that argument in court. In a filing last night saying it should have been fully anticipated that the former president would have had sensitive material at his home, and that the special master should possess a top secret security clearance. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump is speaking out about January 6th, saying he's financially supporting some accused rioters.
It's a disgrace what they've done to them. If I decide to run and if I win, I will be looking very, very strongly about pardons.
Amen.
Full pardons.
It comes the same day a retired NYPD officer received the longest sentence yet, 10 years for using a metal flagpole to assault a Capitol Police officer.
And Peter, separately,
I just thought that was awesome. I mean, this is what Trump does best. What he does extremely well, and we really shouldn't be surprised. We should not be surprised that when Trump doesn't get his way, he gets the lawyers. The lawyers litigate, and in courtrooms. I'm still trying to figure out, well, I used to sit there and say, what does Trump get all this money? And then I realized he's a grifter. His cult will give him money. And some financial institutions will give him money. And it just makes me wonder, because he has top secret documents out there, how else he's being funded. At this point, it's really not, I mean, it's not far-fetched. And they'll sit there and say that, oh, well, they planted it. They planted top secret documents that were at your home that you weren't supposed to have, because you don't have security clearance, but they planted it in such a way to sway public opinion. But you're not arguing that you didn't have documents from Jump Street. If I was Donald Trump's lawyer, I would apply to be Donald Trump's lawyer, because apparently the people he employs and even he himself have very little understanding of how the law works. I said it once and I'll say it again. No president, once they have left the White House, retains the same clearance they had once before. The president, once he leaves, is no longer the president. He goes back to being a private citizen. That means all the parental access he had when he was once commander-in-chief is no longer there. No amount of conservatives, activists, or people of that nature will argue that fact. That's like saying that President Bush can have the same access when President Obama was elected. In the same sense, President Obama, now Barack Obama, cannot have the same access as the failure-in-chief once had. You don't have that ability once you have the White House. It's not like you can just go back and check out a book using the overdue library book reference, even though I still think that's crazy. You compared it to you compared top secret documents to an overdue library book. No, because that overdue library book can contain nuclear codes. That overdue library book can contain information on our enemies and allies and other things that might compromise national security that Trump, now being a private citizen, cannot and should not have. Because we already know that he can easily be bought and paid for. Don't believe me? Look at Trump Tower in New York and see how many people actually own apartments. Because you'll be quick to point out people. I'll be quick to point this out. There's a certain family up there that owns a good number of Trump apartments in New York that also have oil influence in the Middle East. I'll leave it at that. But we also know Trump can be bought and paid for. So imagine somebody who's a former commander-in-chief and hold a top secret sensitive ass documents and can easily be persuaded or purchased or bought and paid for. That's a scary thought. But at the same time, these are not overdue library books, Mr. Failure-in-Chief. You simply have documents, over 10,000 documents and counting, that you should not have because you do not have the ability to declassify. Declassified does not work by you looking at a document and saying, I declassify this document. No. Just like the Constitution, which again, you fail to read and the people that you employ fail to read, that's not how any of this works. But again, we begin the media circus because this is what Trump does when he does best. He will try to litigate the crap out of it, hoping the other side will break. But the problem is, Uncle Sam's got a pretty good win-loss record when it comes to lawsuits. Just saying. Moving right along, though, guys, I keep saying as we get closer to that ever-marching November to where elections are going to happen, you're going to see a lot of people come out the woodwork. And Republicans, I am not surprised, because even the most sanest Republicans don't recognize their party now, especially in the case of this gentleman about to show, who had some interesting comments about Juneteenth. And yes, I cannot make this up.
You look at the newest vote to appease to the radical left by federalizing gay marriage, just making the federal government in charge of it. The 47 Republicans that voted for that should be ashamed, and they need to all be primaried and removed. There's no room for them. We need to repeal the Juneteenth holiday that the woke Congress passed last year. That's non-negotiable. No more woke holidays. It's time to go back to the 4th of July.
Yeah, that fool said it. If you want to know who that is literally, and I hate to say this, because a lot of people are going to stand and say, is he from? Yes, Florida. That was basically Florida Republican candidate Anthony Sabatini, who is also calling for removing the Auerfeld versus Hodges ruling, which was for same-sex marriages. He's also calling for the repeal of Juneteenth, saying that, the woke have made a federal holiday, that we should go back to the 4th of July. Now, I would be the first person to say this, and I have no problem saying it. The 4th of July was never celebrated really by Black folks. I mean, yeah, we gladly took the day. We gladly took the paid day off. We gladly still grilled along with everybody else, and, chilled out and enjoyed our day. But for a lot of minorities out there, it was never about our actual freedom, because even though the 4th of July had passed, historically, there were still slaves in the South. It's the reason why Juneteenth is actually celebrated, because literally that was the day that Union soldiers had to actually enforce the Emancipation Proclamation to slaves in the South. Because, again, the good old your heritage, the Confederacy, refused to let their slaves go, even post the Civil War. That's why Juneteenth has a lot more impact for minorities than the 4th of July. But that being said, that Juneteenth should have long since been a federal holiday. That there are still some people out there that feel like Juneteenth shouldn't be a holiday. And yet they wonder why I keep saying the whole time, even though critical race theory isn't taught in schools, we might need to just reconsider that. Just because simple fact of the matter is, people look at 4th of July and like, that's America. That's our home. That is a Pledge of Allegiance. We stand to acknowledge the flag. We defend our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and beer and NASCAR and big ass. You get the point of what I'm trying to make here. But that's why I say a lot of times where people get their nationalism mixed up with patriotism, which is why they always try to say the woke try to do this. Only in Florida, between that man and Governor Ron DeSantis, they use the words, well, it's the woke message, it's the woke agenda, it's doing this and doing that. I'm like, I'm sorry, where did Juneteenth become a woke agenda? The same reason why we said that lynching, we finally got around to where lynching is a federal hate crime. Let me point this out again. It wasn't too long. I think it was 2 months ago. Yeah, 2 months ago. We just made a federal hate crime of lynching became a federal hate crime act. Think about that for a second. 2022, and lynching just now became a hate crime. And yet, you got individuals like that are running for office who want to repeal Juneteenth, who want to repeal same-sex marriages, because for all their talk about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, let's just call it what it is. They want to oppress people into their way of living because they think they are morally superior for multiple reasons besides idiocracy. I mean, it's really what it is. It's literally idiocracy. It's like saying, I believe in God's guns and country, and if you don't believe in that, then you're not American. Remember that was said a long time ago? If you're not this, you're not American. If you don't eat cheese, if you don't eat bacon with your cheeseburgers, you're not American. If you don't love American football, you're not American. If you don't drink light beer, you're not American. If you don't drive a Chevy or a Ford or a Dodge, you're not American. Remember all that? That's how it used to be. That's exactly how it used to be. And yet, as funny and as comical as those things are, those things have irreparable damage when it comes to the fact that there's a lot of people out there that are under this thing and believe it. That's why I say a cult under Trump is possible, because a lot of people bought into what he was selling. And he was too good of a con man to see that there's a lot of angry Mayo people out there, and all he did was tap into it. He tapped into it. He spoke exactly what they wanted to hear. And he, unfortunately, was charismatic enough to get them to vote for him. And the scary part is he could wind up doing it again. Unless he's in jail this time. But I digress. But moving forward, guys, again, I wanted to bring this up as well, because I keep saying what's going on with the Hold My Beer competition, especially in the southern states. Texas, again, is throwing their hat into the ring. Why? Because Texas Family Services are about to literally collapse because of Governor Abbott signing a bill later this year into place requiring child abuse investigation of gender-confirming care for minors, which, again, taxed the state's Child and Human Services group. Because, again, Governor Abbott and mayors like him think that there's this movement to convert kids into LGBTQ plus people. There's this, they truly do believe this. This is the most dumbest thing ever, that there is a movement to convert our youth into LGBTQ plus members. Even more so, that teens and kids who are identifying other than what they were born as. Keep in mind, the bill back then sat there and said it blocked care for that, including hormonal and therapy treatments. And the fact that child abuse investigations were looking into this, which is the reason why I brought up that story, because there has been a lot of actual caseworkers within the Texas Department of Family Protective Services that have left. Why? Because their caseload has increased exponentially. And I say this before, it's kind of hard to run a department where your workers have left because your governor is an idiot, which he is. Governor Greg Abbott is an idiot. And even more so, now the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services is about to go under, simply put, because of that. And that is the reason why rhetoric like that is destructive and also has multiple effects. None of it is for the benefit of the kids. It's for the benefit of those idiots who think they're morally superior. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this story as well, because, again, we have a story of another black man that was literally shot in his bed and not a weapon in his hand. Again, you can't make these stories up.
New body camera footage just released by Columbus, Ohio police showing officers shooting and killing an unarmed black man in his own apartment bed. Gabe Gutierrez now has the latest on the investigation, and we must caution you, the video is graphic.
It is a split-second decision that tonight is under a state investigation. We've stopped the body camera video right before 20-year-old Donovan Lewis is shot. The encounter began around 2:15 a.m. Tuesday in Columbus, Ohio. Police say officers were trying to serve a warrant to Lewis for improperly handling a firearm, assault, and domestic violence.
Columbus Police!
Officers knock and identify themselves. The police chief says 8 to 10 minutes go by before anyone answers. Eventually, 2 other men come out and are detained. Police send a dog in, then leash the dog before approaching a bedroom and opening the door. Police released the video just hours after the shooting.
As you're looking at this, frame by frame, there appears to be something He raises his hand.
You can see Lewis's left arm on the bed, his right arm coming over his body. Here's that moment from the body camera of the officer who fired. No guns were found at the scene. The police chief says a device appearing to be a vape pen was later found next to Lewis.
I grieve with our community, but we're going to allow this investigation to take place.
Tonight, an attorney for Lewis's family saying we will get justice for Donovan and do everything in our power to stop these senseless killings. According to Columbus police, the officer who shot Lewis has been with the department 30 years. He's now on administrative leave, and the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation is looking into the case.
Okay, so again, I got to point this out. So again, there's like, well, you can see, and I can already see a lot of people who defend the police. Well, they were serving a warrant for legal use of firearms, so they immediately deemed them hostile. Okay, because at first the way this thing worked out was all great. They announced themselves, they knocked on the door, they didn't breach. Individuals came out, they detained them, they brought in a canine unit, detained the dog. Get to the door where the gentleman's in. Opens the door. Now imagine you're in bed. Imagine you're in bed. Your bedroom door is closed. It's opened. Police are there. You're startled. And you just move. You see police get up. You move. Bam. Again, another black man is killed. But Will, he was being brought on domestic violence charges and brandishing a firearm. Yet no firearm was found on him at the scene. But this is the point that I keep making the entire time about how police approach things. Because it's amazing how for the longest time of this procedure, because I have a theory about law enforcement, that when they do nothing wrong, the footage is immediately out to the world. I have this theory. When law enforcement thinks they've done nothing wrong, the footage is immediately released. When there's possible foul play on law enforcement's part, it's all of a sudden, well, we need to review this before it's released to the public. Because to me, it just feels like, well, that's a split-second decision. Well, here's the thing. If you're serving a warrant and you're getting to a guy in bed, give him at least a chance to get himself together. We've all woken up, okay? Nobody ever wakes up focused. I know me as a morning person, when I get up, I am literally staring at the ceiling for a while and then contemplating life and wondering why I'm not a millionaire yet. But eventually I get up, I take my dog out, I shower, I get ready for the day. But for those 3 to 5 minutes in bed, yeah, I'm contemplating life, trying to get myself together. Imagine the fact that you got cops in front of you, guns drawn, flashlight on you, canine dog leashed at your door. The knee-jerk reaction is everything. Because at that point, you don't know what's going to happen. But then the officer fires a shot, and it's like he's justified because it's a split-second decision? Well, we considered him a dangerous individual. Then why did you not try to apprehend him? See, this is the thing that I don't always get. And, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I just feel this way whenever it comes to law enforcement minorities, that why do they never try to take us in alive? Why is it always hostiles deemed suspect, dangerous, known to carry, if need be, treat with extreme prejudice? I have never in my life understood that. Because again, if a lone gunman can be brought in alive after killing multiple people, if a lone gunman can shoot an officer and still be brought in alive, how is it when it comes to minorities that we have to have the body counts on us? Because no way you slice it. Yes, the officer may get off scot-free. He may. Even though they're going to have to explain, well, it was a split second. His arm was coming behind his back. What should I have done? The same thing you would do if it was a white person. Give him the benefit of the doubt and quit assuming he's the aggressor. But we will follow that story as it goes along. But again, for a lot of minorities, that's the reason why our mistrust for the law enforcement continues. This is why why a lot of us keep saying, why do black people always say F the police? Because that's how we feel. The police is nothing more than the police to us is nothing more than having a green light on black people. That's how a lot of us feel, myself included, that we feel like there is a green light on us and that nothing changes until police training changes. Or as Michael Render said, attack the money. If all these unjustified shoots, things of that nature, were paid out of police pensions, these would stop overnight. Just saying. But we will follow that story as it develops. Move right along, guys. Again, it's amazing that there has been an assessment of students' educations across the nation, and they're worried about the fact that test scores are dropping. It's amazing that they're worried about that now in the midst of a teacher shortage.
2.5 years of COVID disruptions. It is time to take stock of the nation's schools, and the picture isn't good.
We had interrupted school, we'd have school closures, kids missed school for a time because they got COVID.
The National Assessment of Educational Progress tested nearly 15,000 9-year-olds from across the country, something the organization has done every year since the 70s. For the first time ever, 3rd and 4th graders lost ground in math. And in English, numbers dropped more than they have in 30 years.
My son, who's 9 now, was in kindergarten when the pandemic hit.
Kristen Carter has 2 children in elementary school in Springfield, Missouri.
We've worked hard with our kids to practice reading and math and all of these things. But now you see that they have kids in their classroom that are all over the board.
The study highlights the disparities. Higher achievers' scores fell 3 points in math. Lower achievers dropped 10. Differences in race as well. White students' math scores fell 5 points, black students 13. A problem they've noticed in Boston.
A lot of our students who already were in many ways the most vulnerable students are seeing the greatest impact.
Will there be classes that have to start with curriculum from the year before just because kids aren't where they're supposed to be?
Yes, we have some of our classes will have to start from 2 years ago.
In Springfield, they are doing regular testing.
And from that, we will develop a learning plan for all of our students, especially those students that are behind. But I also want to make sure that we're growing those students that arrive to us on grade level.
To make up for lost time, Boston teacher Joel Richards says the system needs more people like him.
We need help. We need more adults in the school loving and teaching our kids. And that's what we've been asking for the last 2 years.
For years, educators have said disparities in education were growing. COVID may have made them worse.
It's not just COVID. It's not just COVID. Again, it amazes me so that we still find ourselves, whenever it comes to education, COVID was literally the makeup remover on an already a downturning situation. Without teachers, education falls. You just literally saw the numbers, especially in minorities. The fact that more minorities are affected more than white kids, that alone should tell you something. But the educator at the end, he said it. We need more help. We need more help. We need loving, educated teachers. I've said this before, that the one thing outside the Department of Education, what they're doing with student loans, I sat there and said the Department of Education's budget needs to be as unlimited as the Pentagon's. Why? Because we need to pay teachers more. We need to give teachers everything that they're asking for. We need to equip our schools with a lot more than just the brick and mortar. We actually need to invest. I cannot stress this enough. We actually need to invest in our education the same way we invest in wars. That's how you solve the problem. And drop the Common Core, overhaul the public education as a whole to actually develop critical thinkers and not just kids taking tests. Develop logical progression instead of just memory recall, because that's what develops great. That's what actually develops kids. You know, having programs like band and metal and wood shops and auto shops, having home economics be a little bit retooled, having actual credit and literacy classes being taught, coding and technology being taught in these schools. That changes everything. Everything I just discussed is being done overseas in other countries. But yet, for the U.S., the Department of Education has to cut their budget every year. Meanwhile, The Pentagon gets a blank check and has failed every audit for every penny they have spent. And yet, I keep saying the same thing. You want to solve this problem? Not only from a federal level, but from a local or state level, pay these teachers. Give them what they need. Give these schools what they need. Because that's really how you solve the educational problem. You don't do it by looking at it and going, COVID caused this. Oh no, COVID didn't cause this. COVID was just a big ass spotlight on an already underlying problem. No different than the water pipes in Jackson, Mississippi failing, and now Jackson, Mississippi has an issue with the drinking problem, same with Flint, Michigan. Like I said, COVID didn't just make these things happen. They were already there. COVID was just a makeup remover. That's all I'm saying. But speaking of things, again, that don't make any sense, Drag Time Story Hour is under fire again just because armed protesters came to the Drag Time Story Hour that's being done in libraries. I wish I could make this up.
They stood up, they raised their voices, and together this community cheered as protesters were forced to leave drag queen story time with Tori Tia at a bookstore in Campbell, where they tell us a group showed up with signs, and at one point a few of them pretended to be a part of the audience.
He was saying like some really transphobic stuff, like he was calling me a transvestite and like I shouldn't be led around the children and that parents shouldn't be like, the parents should be ashamed of themselves.
In the days leading up to this event, Books Inc. says it received several phone calls against drag queen storytime, so they made sure to contact police before and during the event. Police did respond, but said the protest was in a public space and no laws were broken.
I'm really proud of like not only our like gay queer community, but of the allies and the parents that brought their children and made sure that their children knew nothing but the love and the like light that we were there to be there for.
Both Tory and Silicon Valley Pride were made aware of possible protesters, so they called on their LGBTQ plus community to come out and make sure it didn't escalate, as it has in recent incidents. Just months ago, a group described as Proud Boys stormed into Drag Queen Story Hour at a San Lorenzo public library. This quickly turned into a possible hate crime investigation.
It tells us that we have a lot more work to do. I think even in a progressive state such as California, that there is still, underlying bigotry, there's underlying hate, there's underlying stereotyping and ignorance.
Even though the protesters continued their disruptions outside, Tia kept reading, something she says she couldn't have done without all of the support she received. In Campbell, Stephanie.
That's crazy, isn't it? And I think I had nothing against it. We actually here in Tennessee had Drag Time Story Hour, and I'm all for it. Reason being, because number one, it teaches kids literacy. I always say it best. I wish for all kids, as much as I love electronics, as an IT person, as much as I love technology, I love to see kids read, whether it's comic books, whether it's manga, whether it's detective fiction, whether it's science fiction, whether it's nonfiction, whether it's documentary, whether it's just funny stories, scary stories, what have you. If children are reading, the fact that a child does better in schools when they're reading books. And the fact that you have individuals, regardless of who they are, that want to read to these kids, I will always encourage that. I will always encourage that because there is so many positives to that. But everybody sees, oh, it's a drag queen. It's a drag queen that's going to be reading to these people, reading to these kids. And it's going to, I was like, please, oh God, don't say convert. It's going to convert them. They're gonna think that it's okay. They're gonna think that this is gonna sway them. Let me tell you something about children, okay? Children's minds change with the day. Have you ever been around a 5-year-old? Have you ever been around a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old? Their minds change as quickly as the next episode on Netflix. But they're supposed to. They're learning. They're accepting. They are expanding their social cues. And again, if a person who is different from me wants to take time out of their day to read books in a library, to children to encourage them to read more. I got nothing against that. At the same time, I always say it best. You are also teaching cultural awareness. You're teaching cultural awareness to kids. You know, the things that kids should have, instead of white kids going out here saying it's okay to say the N-word, it's okay to act like a black person, just like you have white people out here that are throwing racist parties of watermelon, grape soda, and mocking Juneteenth, because that was an actual story we covered last week of a firefighter whose boss took him to a racist white party where a bunch of white people thought it was okay to make fun of black people in front of a black person. That tells me off the bat that we need to be better about what we teach our kids. That yes, we need to teach them that if we're going to say that we accept everybody, that we need to actually do that. That we shouldn't sit there and say, oh, he's in drag and he's teaching my kid. What is he teaching your kid besides Dr. Seuss? What is he teaching your kid besides Captain Underpants? What is he teaching your kid besides multiple other books out there that are in the library, and encouraging them to read? What else is said person doing to them outside of when they go home and ask you, why was he in a dress, or why was she dressed like a man? You should, as a parent, should sit there and say, well, that's how they choose to dress, and that's how, and we should respect their decision and acknowledge it. But we shouldn't judge it. That's why I say all the time, parents kill me when I see some parents that have this mindset of, I don't want my child going to drag time story hour. Your child, your decision. But I feel it's the wrong decision, because you're letting your child miss out on actual social interaction to where someone else's behavior won't be weird or off-putting or insulting or scary. Because if you teach them at a young age what cultural acceptance is, the better, productive, progressive citizens that'll come from that, because they were explained and shown that it was completely okay. That however they choose to live their lives is completely okay and is not harming to them. But no, some of y'all just choose to be bigots. That being said, guys, we're going to move on, because again, President Joe Biden, who's on his victory lap by now, with the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act, with the passing of his student loan debt program, although it could go a whole lot farther, the fact that he is passing a new crime bill, has decided to do a primetime address in which he went back to his progressive agenda a little bit, because he called out Republicans. Yes, can't make it up.
President Biden speaking last night in Philadelphia about what he called the battle for the soul, blasting former President Trump and MAGA Republicans, arguing democracy is under assault. Our senior White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, is at Independence Hall with more. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Michael. Well, this was one of the harshest critiques we've heard yet from this president. Biden arguing that the November elections are really a moral choice, warning that the preservation of our democracy is at stake.
As I stand here tonight, equality and democracy are under assault.
Overnight, President Biden outlining a stark choice.
Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
Biden warning their election denials are a threat to the nation.
Democracy cannot survive when one side believes there are only two outcomes to an election. Either they win or they were cheated. You can't love your country only when you win.
The president eager to make the upcoming midterm elections a referendum on his predecessor, calling out Donald Trump by name and referencing MAGA Republicans more than a dozen times.
MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence.
Violence, Biden said, like the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol.
They look at the mob that stormed the United States Capitol on January 6th, brutally attacking law enforcement, not as insurrectionists who placed a dagger at the throat of our democracy, but they look at them as patriots.
Hours before his speech, a judge issuing the longest sentence yet to a member of the mob, former New York City police officer and U.S. Marine Thomas Webster. He now faces 10 years in prison for his actions that day. In total, nearly 250 people have been sentenced for their roles in the attack. The former president is fiercely.
So again, as it goes to the story about that police officer who is now getting the longest sentence so far, 10 years for assaulting Capitol police officers. Biden is literally, I'm not saying he's not taking the victory lap, but at the same time, it is amazing to me that now, with everything going his way, his approval ratings are up and things of that nature. Now he's sitting there saying, look, we don't want to go back. He went progressive again. A lot of it is progressive because a centrist president wouldn't sit there and point out stuff. But now that he's got some things under his belt, he may or may not have secured votes. If you listen to conservatives, because again, this is what happens on a centrist agenda, which I will agree to some point, that when it does come to election periods, all of a sudden, and that window is closing, especially for Democrats to get stuff passed, that miraculous stuff does get passed. I will give him that. That he sat there and called Republicans out and sat there and said, well, you can't win an election. And if you don't, you can't sit there and say you were cheated. You can't sit there and say you love this country, but at the same time you prosecute, you act the way you act. I'll give him and his speechwriter talking points for that one. But again, Biden, like I said, the plan could have gone a little bit farther. I still say the student loan debt could have been accepted, just because we spent nearly $7 trillion on the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Student loan debt is literally over $1.7 trillion. We could have already accepted that since we'll be paying for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq for a couple of decades to come. What's not student loan debt? But at the same time, I'll give him credit for the fact that he did finally get the Republicans again. But it still feels like the campaign, which I already said, I'm not sure about Biden in 2024. I'm not even sure about, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, because I still think that, in my opinion, she's the most ineffective vice president in history, next to Mike Pence. And Mike Pence's only contribution to his run as vice president was upholding the electoral vote process. The only thing he's done. Kamala Harris may have helped get in Kajani Brown Jackson as the first Black woman on the Supreme Court. She may have been the tiebreaker for that. But what else? Democrats are going to have a hard time getting votes in, even though Republicans have made themselves so hard to hate. They made them hard to hate because, again, they basically praised when Roe versus Wade got turned down. And we talked about that in the midweek review, that a lot of those Republican candidates right now are softening their stances because they realize you've just possibly pissed off the biggest group of voters that can determine your employment come November. So the point I'm making is, Biden, yes, I will give you that. However, I kind of wish, I can only say it's a little easy to go after Republicans now, considering the fact that your last three major pushes, two of them have went to your desk and been signed. The third one, which again is the new crime bill, will wait till be seen. But again, it's easy to sit there and puff up your chest now because you've gotten two, which nobody believed you would get, measures put into place. Well, actually, technically four. I forgot about the gun law. But then again, the gun law was tailored more to Republicans. It really doesn't do enough. But hey, you actually got some gun reform passed through, which is going to kind of be the sticking point for this administration so far. It could have done more. Yeah, Biden-Harris's first presidential term. Yeah, they could do more. But the last word I got, guys, before we get to our feel good segment is a bank I never thought I'd mention, because just like Wells Fargo, I never want to do any business with them. I think that they are corrupt. I think they have been accused multiple times of identity theft, and yet somehow they are still in business. I am not talking about Wells Fargo, by the way. I am literally talking about Bank of America, which they, in a very closed off program, will announce zero down payment, zero closing cost mortgages for first time home buyers in Black and Hispanic communities. Currently, right now, the five cities, Chicago, Dallas, Detroit, Los Angeles, Miami, will be offered the program first. again, I have sat there and said this many a times during this podcast that the American dream is to own a home. I live myself in Tennessee. I see it all the time. Homes are getting bought and sold, demolished. Out-of-state land developers and hedge fund managers are building up apartments by the second. I myself am surrounded by where I currently live right now, am surrounded by 6 new apartment lots. Six new apartment lots in the last 5 months. And a lot of these hedge funds and these other land companies out there have realized it's a lot easier to keep renters as a endless stream of income than you would homeowners, because homeowners are not going to be infinite cash payers. Eventually, they are going to pay off their home and receive the deed to their house and the land to it, and then no more revenue stream. But renters will always be a revenue stream. And that's the reason why you're seeing a lot more apartments than homes lately. And the reason why homes, because of inflation and things of that nature, the prices have gone up. Banks were getting stingier about who they give these loans to. So I have to give Bank of America credit. I have to give them credit that they are looking at minorities first for the zero down payment, zero closing costs option for first-time home buyers. I have to commend them for that, because again, that does answer the housing crisis we do have in America right now. That literally, if you're paying rent is too freaking high. And if you're trying to get a home, unless you win the lottery, it is a painstaking, pain in the ass process. Try saying that 5 times fast. But again, we'll give kudos to Bank of America, where I'll give credit where credit's due, even though I still wouldn't Bank of America if my life depended on it. That being said, guys, we're going to move to our feel-good segment. Usually on How the Frack we got here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it's the weekend, Labor Day weekend. So hopefully if you do have Monday off, please enjoy it. If you don't have Monday off, or if you do work through the weekend, may it be a quick shift. Definitely keep dry where you're at, because Mother Nature and hurricane season are definitely starting up. That being said, guys, I did want to cover this story of something I did not know about, that the Jackie Robinson Museum is opening, and the fact of what his wife, his late wife wanted for said museum. Check it out.
Jackie Robinson, forever remembered for breaking baseball's color barrier in 1947. The new museum proudly displays his uniform and bat and a lot of historic sports memorabilia. But his widow, Rachel Robinson, now 100, insisted the museum focus on her husband's work beyond the playing field, which she has said was more important to both of them.
She wanted us to talk about Jackie's dogged commitment to his community and to first-class citizenship being available for all Americans.
Della Britton helped design the museum.
This is Jackie Robinson and Martin Luther King. They were close.
Yep.
There's Robinson's Army uniform, where he became one of only a few black officers and faced a court-martial for refusing to move to the back of a military bus 11 years before Rosa Parks.
As a black man, I find it quite discouraging to look around and find how little has been done to lift minorities from the depths of poverty.
After baseball, he started a bank and ran a construction company that built affordable housing.
He was the original activist athlete.
He was just 53 when he died.
He did a lot in those 53 years.
So much the Robinson Museum is being hailed as among the first in New York City, dedicated largely to the civil rights movement.
What do you think you remember most from this museum?
That he was an activist and someone who was encouraging and someone who helped other people.
And a space determined to inspire future generations to continue Robinson's work.
National Baseball Hall of Fame.
Ron Allen, NBC News, New York.
I was like, it started to go into that. I'm beautiful. I was like, I'm sorry. But the reason why I say representation matters. Representation matters. Jackie Robinson, phenomenal baseball player, but also a wonderful civil rights activist. And I love the fact that his wife wanted more of that to be shown than, of course, his athletic career, because it needs to be. Why? Representation matters. It's that simple. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. So I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for sharing, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugging before I do get out of here, guys. I do want to first shout out my buddy Vaughn at Big BZA Dot. You can find him Big BZA Dot on all socials, Vaughn Westwood on Facebook, and also on TikTok. Check him out as he does his usual "What is Big Busy Thinking?" because he's definitely an out there character, but always funny. But definitely check him out. Of course, myself, guys, you can find me on all of my socials, BlackBox447. Like and follow me everywhere, because I usually post everything that I watch and review, and also do some gym stuff because I do a couple push-ups. Also about positivity, encouraging people, because again, we have been through a lot. Please, oh please, I cannot stress this enough. Be kind to each other. Check on your loved ones. Check on your strong friends. Check on people, because we are all facing different battles out there, and you never know what another person's going through. Just saying hi, hello, or just checking up on them may do a lot more than brighten up their day. You may save a life in the process. So again, it takes zero energy to be nice. It takes everything to be a dick. So don't be a dick. That's simple. Also, the ticker that you see at the bottom, guys, I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger. If you copy and paste that into your browser, we'll take you to my link tree that has the Facebook and YouTube groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack got here, get bit, of course, Supplements Podcast. Like, share, and subscribe to all of those channels. I would certainly appreciate that. Aside from that, guys, I would say this. COVID is out there. Coronavirus is still out there. And it's many Decepticons still out there. If you're going to be in an area with a lot of people, please wear a mask. Protect yourself, because when you protect yourself, you protect others. And that's how we're going to get past this pandemic, because we are still in a pandemic, even though it doesn't feel like that. It's not being reported as such. The last thing I'll say about how the Frack got here, guys, it's all about staying informed. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information, allow you to make up your own mind, but provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better in society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, witnessing history as our first 4-star Black general has been appointed. When we don't learn from history, that's when we're doomed to repeat it. That's when we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up by our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. And then again, like I said, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this.